Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be with you, and thank you for attending. Can someone give me a thumbs up? Can you hear me okay? Great. Thank you for attending the first of the two informational webinars that we'll be having for the Charles E. Kaufman Foundation 2023-2024 Grants Program this year. My name is Michael Jonas. I'm the Vice President for Community Partnerships at the Pittsburgh Foundation. For inclusion purposes, give a little visual description. I'm a 54-year-old white male. I have short, dark hair, and I'm in my home office in a blurred background with my dog on the couch to the left of me. If you have any questions, you can please put them in the chat. We'll be monitoring that today. Please know that there's also auto captioning being provided for today's event. If you would like to enable that, you can use the closed caption button at the bottom of your screens. Again, please use the chat function for any questions you might have that we'll make sure to get to those at the end. If there are any offline sort of questions that require a little more attention, more than happy to connect with you, after the call or, via email as well. So please remain muted during the discussion just so you can leave your camera off. And there will be some time for discussion at the end. And if you're experiencing any technical difficulties hearing us or things like that, use the chat function and you can connect with Taryn Lumley directly and she can help you out. She's a master at that. So great to be with you. And it's really exciting to share with you Mr. Kaufman's vision. I see some really familiar faces or names in the grid here, and some new names, which is great to have you with us as too. Mr. Kaufman's mission was to inspire novel scientific exploration. His fund was established at the Pittsburgh Foundation in 2010, and he was an avid outdoorsman, member of the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy, very, very soft-spoken, and he really dreamed of being able to support innovative pursuit of fundamental scientific questions in the disciplines of biology, chemistry, and physics. He really wanted to change the world. He wanted to really help inspire new science in the basic fundamental science areas in a way with the philosophy that much more can be accomplished through others than just himself alone, and modeled off of the Welch Foundation in Texas. He's really created an incredible pipeline for supporting basic and fundamental science here in the state of Pennsylvania only, and really interested in building a community of science and practice that it's a leader for the country and the world in many ways as well. We are on the hunt for some video and information to share more about this, but this is a picture of Mr. Kaufman, who Kelly Ranker on our team from our Development Donor Services team got to know very well. And we feel it's a real honor to help see his mission forward. The Kaufman Foundation's mission is to, again, support fundamental research in chemistry, biology, and physics in and within Pennsylvania institutions of higher education. The foundation distributes grants. We have three different areas of practice for grant making. One is the new investigator research program. The second is new initiative research program. And this year, while we took last year off, we'll also be having the integrated research education program as well. Our team at the foundation is here to help and support you in any way we can in developing proposals and LOIs coming in. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We have a fantastic team. Christian Gauthier is our PhD. Dr. Gauthier is our consultant at the Department of Biological Sciences at the University of Pittsburgh. Brittany Eltman is the program assistant that helps support the administrative side of the Kaufman Foundation program on our side. Dr. Graham Hatfull is chair of the Scientific Advisory Board, and he in the Department of Biological Sciences at the University of Pittsburgh, and he has been advising and guiding this program since its inception in 2010. As you all may have seen from the website as well, the Scientific Advisory Board, there's a link here, but you can find them on our website. Is a fantastic group of scientific leaders that have been guiding this program in the scientific review process. The Kaufman Foundation is a supporting org of the Pittsburgh Foundation. So it is its independent organizational status. And it is also guided by a board of directors, and leadership of the board of directors in the Pittsburgh Foundation is all overseen by Lisa Schroeder, the president and CEO of the Pittsburgh Foundation as well. So lots of layers of authority here in the space, but it really is Dr. Hatfull and the Scientific Advisory Board that provides the scientific leadership and recommendations and review of the grants that come in through the process. So again, there are these two areas here that we're going to focus on now, just mirroring what you see on the website in terms of the new investigator research and new initiative research areas. We have had some changes in the inclusion criteria this year, which we'll highlight, and happy to answer your questions as any come up as well. Wanted to let you know on our website, you can also find some information around the new release of the awards that just came out in January, of some summary, and we're just about to post abstracts of all those grants that were funded in this past year. So you have some sense of those who were successful and work that's going on within our larger community of practice here in the state of Pennsylvania. We do encourage lots of outreach and collaboration and support, and we're looking, just as a spoiler, to hopefully have another in-person symposium of some sort in 2025. We really put a hold on a lot of that work, like we all did in our professional spaces during COVID, and we're looking to restart that as well. So the new investigator grants themselves, and again, this is reiterating what you've seen on the site and some of the inclusion criteria, are to support innovative scientists in Pennsylvania as they transition to an academic position and as a new and independent investigator. The proposals must address a basic fundamental science question focused on core principles, physics, biology, and chemistry, or other boundaries between those fields, as we know that they've evolved over time. And those are areas that we'll share some discipline information in a little bit, just as we've done a bit of an audit recently of the programming. Applied or clinical studies are not supported here, and there's a maximum of $150,000 over 2 years, with $75,000 a year for those. And those require an interim report in the middle of that process to release the second year of funding as well. Eligibility criteria here, which has evolved and changed a little bit again, are those who have a primary appointment in an institute of higher education in Pennsylvania. And applicants must be United States citizens or lawful permanent residents at the time of the LOI deadline, the submission that comes in. And so these are sort of non-negotiable criteria that we have as part of the program. Wanted to let you know that we have added some new status in terms of those who are eligible. It can be a full-time tenured tenured track appointment, a full-time tenured faculty member, and we've added this criteria, which mirrors the NIH criteria of an independent research faculty appointment with evidence of independent research programs. So this may be, someone who's on the research track, but they do have their own lab, own work and process, and not folded within another lab. Again, mirroring the NIH criteria. New for 2024 is you may not yet have completed successfully as a PI to receive a substantial NIH award. So that would be something, like an R01 or an independent award at that level. And we have extended the timeline, which previously was 7 years, that you could now be within 10 years of your terminal degree program, PhD or clinical degree program as well. So moving from 7 years to 10 years for that status for the new investigator award. For the new initiative awards, the goal is to stimulate and establish investigators towards innovative collaborations. We've had some really exciting new ideas and collaborations come forward. One of the this year's applicants and awardees from last year, that was just awarded, is a combination of a physicist and a textile scientist that has been able to come together and develop some really new, interesting ideas that challenge the scientific advisory board, challenge the field, and are looking to really move some really interesting ideas forward. So really excited about that. And so really interested in that really new innovative collaborations. This is a good learning impact space that we want to advance further. Again, has to be investigators from Pennsylvania institutions, and proposals are required to address, again, the same areas of fundamental science and biology, physics, and chemistry, or disciplinary boundaries. These awards are larger. They're a maximum of $300,000 over 2 years at $150,000 per year. Just wanted to share again that there must be at least 2 investigators for the project. All principal or co-investigators must hold primary appointments within a Pennsylvania institution or higher education. We often get questions about what if this investigator, is in New Jersey or others. That can't work, although some of the proposals have included a consultant in the past, but the primary PIs and that budget allocation is going to Pennsylvania institutions. All in principal investigators, again, must be residents of the citizens of the U.S. and also lawful or lawful permanent residents. The same independent investigator research sort of faculty appointment status has also been extended to this grants program as well, reflecting in the NIH criteria. And the investigators together must reflect an expertise in one of those core or integrated specialties. The proposed research must be a new initiative and not currently funded from others. So this isn't a place to recycle another proposal, but taking that work to another level, to a new initiative, something that has maybe grown out of some of the work that the investigators may have done to some degree, but just not recycling that kind of work, but really show new novel direction in the work as well. And then the other program that we're relaunching again this year is the Integrated Research and Education Grants, the IREG program. It's much smaller, and it's really meant to help include more teaching, less tier 1 level institutions for research, but teaching institutions. And the goal is to provide support for research on direct engagement of undergraduate students in this area, also in the basic and fundamental science areas. And this is also only for Pennsylvania institutions. Applications must include authentic hands-on research experience with expectation of leading to new discoveries, peer-reviewed publications, but to really engage in rigorous science to engage those undergraduates in the process. We do know that there are lots of great undergraduate science and training happening at some of those larger tier 1 institutions, which can be integrated into some of the other work and science that's happening. But this is really to include an opportunity for some of the smaller institutions by size and by research capacity to compete and to take advantage of Mr. Kaufman's support in this way. And these are up to $100,000 awards over 2 years. The Kaufman Foundation, we wanted to share with you, this is a little dated information. Many of you may have seen this before in some of the presentations we've given, but it's to let you know some of the trajectory and background around some of the research we've done. We are looking to redo this type of evaluation in the next 2 to 3 years of the program overall, to sort of always make sure that we're doing process improvement and always reflecting the current practices in the field and priorities. And wanted to make sure for those who are looking to apply, or if you've applied or you know anyone who's been awarded, really important that we get the survey data back from the investigators that are supported to the program too. And we're a little tenacious on that side. So really hoping to have that input back from you too. This is a highly competitive process, and we've learned a lot that it's also been really productive for grantees. So you can see this pretty messy, pretty colorful chart that shows Kaufman Foundation trajectory of those who were funded from 2013 to 2019. This is basically meant to show that there's a linear trajectory in terms of grants, total benchmarking from 2020 and looking backwards. Yes, there's a linear relationship here. It's a very competitive program. So this is not to say that these individuals would not have been on this trajectory on their own, but it shows an onward trajectory of many years of people really being successful. 2018 and 2019 showing really strong success as well. We know that there are impacts of COVID that have impacted people in their academic careers and trajectories and others, and really interested in ways that we can help restart and support some of those programs too. Did want to make sure to share with you that this is in terms of where your discipline is focused. In general, we see that about 22, almost a quarter of the grants that have been funded over that period of time were in the areas of physics and astronomy. The next highest area were biochemistry, genetics, and molecular biology. The next highest area was in chemistry, which was tied with material science, and then a mixture of those around the spectrum of basic science and fundamental science research areas as well. It's a really exciting area and opportunity to build locally within the state. We know that there have been combinations and merging of different programs at the higher tier level and at the lower tier level. And we're really interested in learning from you on ways that the Kaufman Foundation can be more and most impactful moving forward. When we think about the survey findings that we learned is that the majority of respondents over that past survey found that the grant funded was able to significantly advance their research career, not only externally in terms of getting further support and preliminary funding, but also providing the space and time and opportunity for them to excel in their own departments as well. Since receiving the funds, they were able to, in the new investigator area, really excel, the vast majority of them, in terms of getting external funding. 67% published the results of their foundation funded research, and all would recommend. No one had any trouble recommending the program or had any really significant concerns, though they did sort of look for more opportunities for professional engagement across the field, which is why we're thinking of really trying to restart the in-person engagement as well. We saw really similar findings in terms of the new initiative grant awards. These were more seasoned and experienced investigators that were able to build on their trajectory, but it was really the combination of them being able to do some work in a new novel way together, which was really incentivizing, and hopefully, as we found, also being able to bring in more money, more publications, but also advance their scientific careers and that of their institutions as well. So wanted to share with you, this is our contact information directly as well at the foundation for myself and Brittany. Brittany Casaus is an associate on our team who I may not have introduced before, which I meant to do, who's also new to our team, that's going to be helping to sort of Brie Casaus lead a lot of our external engagement and communication, and she'll be working very closely with me on a lot of the communication with you all and the planning for some of the outside events as well. But you can reach out to anyone on our team for more information for next steps and questions in the application or LOI process. It's an exciting program for us, and we feel it's a real privilege to be able to bring Mr. Kaufman's mission to practice here. And on behalf of the Pittsburgh Foundation, we're happy you attended the webinar as well. So really interested in any questions you might have. If there's anything that we didn't cover or that we've missed, a really burning question that many people have is indirect costs. It's 10% of the award that comes out of the award as well. It's not in addition. And we do know that those indirects are incredibly important to your institution. If you have thoughts, questions about that, please don't hesitate to reach out to us and let us know. There is not flexibility at this time to change that as well, but we are looking at new strategies for increasing potential grant amount and or awards to institutions to keep up with where the field has moved over the years. We're looking at that for future years, but we do manage a sort of finite budget. So we're always balancing that with the number of awards that we can be able to give out per year too. So I see that there are some, I haven't been able to follow the chat. So Bree, do you have any questions or things that have come up in the chat that we can address?
Yes, absolutely. All right. So our first question is from Joshua. They asked, the IRAG grants are focused on, I lost the chat for just a second. The IRAG grants are focused on the same types of research, just involving more undergraduates at teaching-focused institutions, correct? Rather than focusing on science education or research within the classroom.
Yes, it's definitely advancing a scientific question and work, but has a strong component of engaging undergraduates in that process. And the scientific advisory board and as part of the application process, it's clear to be explicit on how undergraduates are involved in that work as well. I know Graham has come off Cram as well, and Graham, please feel free to chime in.
I just, so let me say a quick hello. Let me just chime in briefly on that question. So let me sort of emphasize again what Michael said about we're interested in the research, in the science part of the research that's being described. The question, I think, was part as to whether the research could be pedagogical research, and it is not the intent specifically. However, when describing these types of projects and proposals, obviously having some data sets or some assessment as to the impact of the experiences on the undergraduates is welcome and could be considered a thoughtful part of the process. But the science is, the research is really the science and not just pedagogy.
Thank you, Graham. Bree, any other questions?
Yes, we got a question from Karen that asks, I think this was in reference to the data visualizations. Are those grant totals for LOIs or invited full proposals?
Those are for the programs themselves. So those dollars are set for the new investigator or new initiative areas. So the 150,000 over 2 years, and then 300,000 over 2 years for the two respective programs. They will, those will be for the full proposals when they're invited and when full budgets will be expected. For the LOI, it's a much smaller level of information that will be reflected there. So you'd have to build that out in the LOI period.
All right, we have another question that asks, for the initiative grants, do we have a sense of what the success rate was in the past?
Oh, for funding in those? Yeah. Who was that question from?
It was from
Young. So the success rate, I believe it's been fairly, so there's two different levels. One is we've been trying to share lots more information this year, even with expanding some of the criteria to get more LOIs in, to increase awareness of the program and others. So there's a higher there's a lower success rate for the LOIs as they come in because it's much more competitive at level. I think that's been around 10 or 11%. And then for the grants themselves, I want to say it's been upwards of 14%, 15% of those that were applied were funded. It depends on the year, and it's hard to break that down because it also depends on the discipline. In general, the committee is really clear to prioritize parity among institution and among the scientific area and others, but it's really driven by the science and alignment with the criteria in which the Kaufman Foundation guides. So the committee looks to see if there were, more chemistry or physics in one year to make sure that there's parity over time. But overall, it is competitive and a little bit better than the NIH standard. Graham, do you want to reflect on that?
Yeah, and just a couple of comments. I think that so the idea is to try to fund, and Michael would have the hard numbers, but to try to fund the full proposals at a pretty high level, meaning 25 to 30% of what we receive gets funded. And in order to do that, it means that it has to be fairly selective at the LOI stage from going from LOI to full proposal. That in turn is balanced by the sense that submitting a one-page LOI with the supporting information is a relatively small amount of effort, as opposed to the 5-page proposal for the full proposal, which is not, again, it's not a huge effort, but it's much more than 1 page, right? And so the yield, the chances of success is essentially balanced to the amount of work that needs to be put into those proposals. And so it's balanced in terms of the other aspects that Michael commented on in terms of discipline, institution, etc. But those are the principles that are guiding the success rates.
Yep, and just to let you know, I sent a quick note to Christian. Thank you so much. Last year, it was 22% of the LOIs were invited from the pool that was submitted, and 28% of the full proposals were funded. And in general, as Graham shared, that's a priority as we move forward to, for a parity along that process. So that gives you an idea of the acceptance rate. Thank you, Christian. Bree, any others?
All right, so our next question is, do resubmissions of invited full proposals get special consideration?
I think that when people if the resubmission, if it was declined in the previous year, we don't provide, pink sheets, but we do provide comments, that came up at the scientific advisory board at a higher level. There isn't a priority or a given to resubmissions. They are asked to submit as an LOI again and go through the same process of review again as if it's a new proposal, because there's, a new field of scientific studies that are being submitted as well. So there's no higher scale or score. But we do hope that the comments from the previous year were helpful and And, again, this is about sifting through that space that is, aligned with the criteria here and hopefully aligned with the foundation's priorities. Graham, anything to add?
No, I think that covers it.
Great. And again, if you have any specific questions offline, please do not hesitate to reach out to me by email or call, or Brittany if it's more process or admin focused as well.
All right, so our next question is, can non-tenure track professors apply, for example, assistant research professors?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that question. Who is that one from?
That one was from Karen.
Karen, thank you. So that is exactly what we've done by expanding the criteria. So a research assistant professor that has an independent lab and research area priority and is working to build their career, and that's your status within the institution. It would meet that sort of more external funding, NIH, National Science Foundation sort of criteria. That is now fine. That was not the case before. You did have to be either on the tenure stream or tenured to apply. What we are careful about is making sure that this is not someone who's a research assistant professor or someone who's new to the field that's working within another investigator's lab and supporting that field area of research. So we do know that the tenure guidelines and criteria have changed. This is an idea and opportunity to be more inclusive. So you'd want to make sure in your LOI that status within your institution, your independent investigator status and support from the department and is really well outlined in your LOI. Thank you for that question, Karen. That's a new area, and also expanding the timeline, recognizing we looked at some data and internally and also externally and found that 10 years was a better reflective base. So hopefully that's helpful for others in the field here. We're always learning with you, so thank you. Other questions?
Next question is, what is the review process like? Does the scientific advisory board do all of it?
Yep. So I'm just going to say it is really an awesome experience, and it is clear, transparent, really conscious of issues of any conflict of interest, and super aligned and calibrated back to the Kaufman Foundation priority and criteria. The relationship and expertise among the SAB is really remarkable. And I'm going to let Graham talk about the culture of that space, because I do think it's worth sharing how the review happens independently, then comes together for consensus building, and then is iterative through the process is really inspiring.
It's a little bit different for the LOI in terms of the details as the full proposals. I mean, the process is that at the LOI stage, all the applications get distributed and they get read and scored. And typically it's a scoring system of like 1 to 5, and we try to distribute them so that there's approximately equal number in those categories. And then all of those data are assembled, and all of the competitive or likely to be competitive proposals are discussed in depth by the SAB, and that means anything that gets scored highly by any one of the SAB is up for discussion. And so that's a fairly lengthy and detailed meeting. We try to encompass all of what we can find in the LOI in that review process as we can. There is a mindfulness to be both thorough and robust and fair, to use the same criteria for each of the LOIs that are received, and then at the end of the day we get to sit down and try to distill that into a fair set of full proposals that we will then request. And the full proposals is done similarly. They get a thorough read from all of the SAB members. They are similarly scored, and then each one is discussed in turn. And a considerable period of time is taken to do that process and to come up with some kind of ranking in essence, and then a discussion at the end as to then which ones will be those final set of proposals that will be recommended. And so The SAB is a bunch of academics, none of whom are shy. They're independently minded. They will always say what they think. And we end up having these, I think, as Michael suggested, very thorough and robust discussions, sometimes, you know, hotly debated topics that we then professionally resolve as we try to persuade each other of the various views that we have for what we see. They are not shy to comment and always listen to everybody else's comments and then to consider them. It's a process that I think has proven to be pretty robust. I think it's proven to be fair as we see, and very mindful, as Michael suggested, of all other things like bias, potential conflicts of interest within the SAB is all openly accounted for.
Thank you for that, Graham. A couple of things I would just add in terms of the review process is, obviously, as you see from the website and from our discussion today, and hopefully it's clear, I mean, the science in which is being proposed is really the center of the Kaufman Foundation program. But it's really important to be mindful of the other criteria that come in with your application. Your letters of support are really important. The committee reads those, reviews those. You don't want to have, two of your co-faculty members writing those letters of support. Your department chair is going to write a great one, and that's their job. They should, and we want to hear about their perspective. We also want to know someone from the field, that you've worked with, a mentor or others, things like that, or others that are reflecting on your work, which is really important. We also want to, they're going to be looking at the history of your grant funding, and if there are some areas that you think might be of concern or require clarification, or you think that the research that you're doing is, similar, but, different than what you're doing, you want to make sure to highlight why that's the case, so that the SAB can do a thorough review of that. So if you have questions about the other criteria, please don't hesitate to reach out, but make sure to prioritize those as well. This is meant to be written in lay language also as well. You've got people from different disciplines that are brilliant, but this is also meant to translate in a way that obviously maybe not the general public, but that it's written in a way that we can learn and understand and engage as well. Sorry, Graham, you were going to say something?
Well, I would just, I was going to say something else, but I've completely forgotten it, because the point you just made is critical and not always understood, and just wanted to lay emphasis to the idea that the SAB has people that work on astrophysics and people that work on microbiology or on synthetic chemistry. And when you write your application, especially the LOI, actually, you are not just writing it. If you're a microbiologist, you are not just writing it to some microbiologist on the SAB. You're writing it to be read and reviewed and understood and critiqued by the astrophysicists and the synthetic chemists and everybody else. And placing detailed project ideas, often important and well thought out, failure to placing them within the context that adds their relevance and a sort of a means for everybody to understand them. That's probably the single greatest reason why LOIs in particular don't get well scored. And so that's just, I think, a very helpful aspect to be mindful of.
Yeah, and I spent, myself almost 18 years in academics writing grants to NIH and others, and, thinking about the review committee and disciplinary practice, while they're going to be familiar with, and they're people who are certainly going to be experienced in your field, my recommendation is if you have more than 4 or even 3 acronyms that are strung together, we don't have to Google the acronyms to find them. We want to be able to kind of read through it, understand the relevance and some definitions too. And I think that's also just an important skill for translating our science into practice, which is more broadly too. So thank you for that.
And can I just say, just the other point I just wanted to lay emphasis to, because it's important, is that the SAB is very mindful at every moment of the process of what we have learned as were the desires of Mr. Kaufman in supporting the research. The idea that it is fundamental, it is basic science that should be relevant but not applied. And I realize that there are gray zones that becomes hard to know how to contextualize that for some specific projects, but it's all clearly spelled out on the website, and I would just encourage you when putting proposals together to return and remind yourself of those core principles, because the SAB is very sensitive to them. We want to follow the advice that was given by Mr. Kaufman as absolutely as closely as we possibly can.
Yeah, thank you, Graham, for that. Actually, that feeds into my next comment beautifully, is that many of you may know, if you're part of your institutional advancement or development team, is that we've worked over the last couple of years to make sure to stress that we ask the institutions, the larger institutions specifically, to share this Kaufman Foundation funding opportunity broadly, even within their clinical departments, because there may be fundamental basic science research happening within those departments as well. So it's not the department label necessarily, it is the science in which it's being performed. And we're really interested in learning with that. And I think that that's where as Graham said, Mr. Kaufman really wanted us to think about how to move and evolve. But it might be the greatest applied science happening, which we love and applaud, but that's not what this program is designed to fund. So just to let you know, and if there's a gray area there, we look forward to talking to you about that and learning with you as well. There was another question, Bree, sorry, I'm skipping forward and seeing the question about acceptance rates more broadly, similar for IREG and the other programs. IREG is much more competitive because it's a much larger pool, and especially this year, we opened it up far and wide because we wanted to do an initial sort of baseline from some of the institutions. So I expect there to be a much lower fund rate. It is very similar and fairly consistent for the new investigator and new initiative, as we shared the numbers before for last year. IREG is a lower fund rate this year for sure, because we're not inviting just 16 or 17 schools. We've opened it much more broadly. So thank you for your patience in that process, and thank you for helping us learn. What we wanted to do is to be much more inclusive and exclusive at this round, and we'll refine that process moving forward as well. And is there a maximum funding threshold in that case? So can a new initiative have funding internally? Oh yeah, you can definitely have small seed funding grants in your institution. We actually love to see that. We want to see that your departments and your schools are investing in you. That does not constitute an independent outside award of independent grant making status, like an R01 or even a P award or others. So that's great. We want to see that they're investing in you, and Mr. Kaufman would, I think, love to see that too. That's not a disqualifier. That's a good thing. But you wouldn't want to apply for the same thing you're doing there. You want to kind of show how that's evolving and growing, I would say. Thank you for the questions. Bree, did I miss any?
I think we've got two left. So Jan asked, also, does the foundation prefer PI and co-PI from different institutions for the new initiative grants, or does it not matter?
Yeah, so that's interesting. I don't think it matters as long as they're disciplinarily distinct. I think what I have, and Graham, interested in your thoughts, I've seen if we look you up and you're in different parallel departments in the same institution and you've published 9 articles together, well, then you're kind of working together already. But if it's in a new area, new phase, I think it is meant to kind of spurn that kind of new, novel, innovative practice. But it is not a requirement that you're from different institutions. But that's kind of a gray area. So Graham, please share.
Yeah. Yes, it doesn't. It's there's no requirements or limitations in those regards. I think that what we're looking for are new initiatives and new collaborative initiatives. There are instances where we've received proposals from 2 investigators who have worked together and have published together. But if they, in their proposal, have persuaded us that what they're proposing is actually a completely new idea, and the fact that they've collaborated on something else is sort of incidental, then we've considered that. We're not out to penalize or to be sort of punitive in these sort of aspects. We're looking for the kinds of scenarios where where the Kaufman Foundation has essentially prompted faculty members who may not have worked together or thought of working together to put their heads together and think of some areas where, hey, I work on this thing and you work on that thing. If we work together, we can open up a new area of science within a discipline. And so we receive applications from where there's two PIs within the same department, in different departments within the same institution, and from different institutions. And I sense that the SAB probably finds, the more different the core expertise is that's being brought to the collaboration, the more sort of attractive it seems as opening up a new area. But that can also be true for two researchers, two investigators that are within the same department as well. So I think those are the guiding principles that we.
Yeah, they might not be, have not had the opportunity, but have thought about, or read a new article from somewhere and had this new idea. So that would be great. What I hope you all will also take away from Graham's comments, which is also thoughtful, is the scientific advisory board does not have a decision tree in which 0, 1, 0, 1, that if you pass this, you go to the next level. If you pass this, it is really about learning and thinking and critically assessing what is being proposed and the criteria together, in each one in its own space and value. So I think that's really a beauty of this process, and not just check marks that are being knocked off. And we really want this to be these webinars to be helpful and resourceful to you and your colleagues. If you could pass this information along to others that may not have been able to attend, there is another webinar. I don't have the date in front of me, Bree or Christian, if you could help with that. I want to say the 14th. We'll see, March 13th. Oh, thank you, Karen. And that's awesome. Welcome to the team. And would also, if there's something that we haven't covered in the discussion or questions that you were hoping to hear, let us know what that is so we can make sure to include it in future ones. We do have an frequently asked questions page on the website that you can come to as well. Bree, I think we have one more.
Yes, we've got one from Linda that says, for new investigator, is only NIH prior funding not permitted? Would holding NSF grant be allowed? Holding an NSF grant be allowed?
Yeah, if you're holding a big NSF grant, an independent sort of investigator type equivalent, that would be similar to like the NIH R01 sort of investigator award. I think we're really trying to make the distinction here around, have you been able to cross that threshold as an investigator to get really significant independent funding to really advance your work? I think it's really, as Graham mentioned, up to you to also help us understand if you have an NSF grant, but there are areas in which you are moving towards, still in a new investigator to being independent, to justify or think about in your LOI as well. But we look at those as parallel external funding sources of independent investigator status. We know that those lines have gone down a lot in terms of funding priority. And there's also lots of exceptions, but we're a K award, for example, a kangaroo, an ROO or a KL2 or others, those are not seen as independent investors. Those are definitely trainee type cultivating awards. So they can be significant in number, but they really are not an independent award of an R01 or NSF type status that well. Graham, does that sound right? Okay.
Yeah. I guess my sense is that the foundation is trying to adhere to the core principles of the new initiative, is to provide an impetus for new investigators to really get their careers moving, and to position themselves so they can apply and ease their path towards getting major funding and have successful careers. And so that's the goal. And if you already have a lot of money, or you've clearly been able to already achieve that, then applying for the Kaufman is not going to be a very good fit, right? And so it's, I think, being mindful of what I think the clearly stated goals are is a helpful way of calibrating one's competitiveness for these awards.
And if you have a question, let us know. If you disagree with our criteria and you think that there's actually a case to be made, we encourage you to submit. So that's part of the discussion. Again, there's sort of measured against the pool of people who are coming in that field as well. Thank you, Christian, for the note. Wanted to definitely clarify, you know, an R03 or an R21, the sort of awards are not disqualifying NIH grants from applying here. It really is the R01 status and some of the P grants or things like that too. So thank you, Christian, for that clarification. Any other questions we have? Or I'm sorry, you have? I'm a bit of a slow marinator sometimes, so I often come off these calls and think, oh wait, I had one more question or something. Please use the website as an opportunity to reach back out to us or ping any of us by email if you have another question. We will make sure to get right back to you. If it's something that you know, we can't on the Pittsburgh Foundation side address, we will work very closely with Graham as his role as the chair of the SAB, and we'll make sure to get that addressed for you and right back to you. We're really excited to have you with us for the webinar and really excited for your inquiries. Ask that you please share this among your community of practice. You might have a colleague that couldn't attend, or you might be having coffee and they're like, I've never heard of Kaufman. And you're like, oh, you're perfect for it. Let them know and invite them to reach out to us too. Enjoy the almost springy type weather that is with us. Everyone thinks there might be another snow coming, but we'll see. And please be safe. And thanks for your interest in the Kaufman Foundation. Thank you, Bree, Christian, and Graham very much for being with us today. And Darren.